it has been 6 weeks since we've had the joy of doing this, or 6 episodes rather, but we get to talk about a loss on this week's edition of Waking the Red Weekly presented by Footy Talks, and what a loss it was. Ahead on the show, we'll discuss all the gory details of Toronto FC's 5-0 defeat to the Philadelphia Union. We'll also be joined by Kristin Knowles of Vocal Minority Podcast in just a little bit. We have some new segments we're going to debut on the show this week as well that we are very excited about. Be sure to ask questions and interact throughout the show wherever you're watching, Facebook or otherwise. We'll try to get to as many as possible. But Jeff, Michael, how's it going this week, guys?
Pretty good. Yeah. I mean, outside of football, I found out that Saved by the Bell's coming back, so that's pretty awesome. Yeah,
that's a win. That's a win. We'll take it.
I'll take it. Exactly.
That is actually a show that I recognize, unlike whichever the other one Hugh and Martin brought up that one time. But let's debut our first segment here right off the top. We're calling this one Kickoff. We'll bring you what we feel is the biggest Toronto FC story in 10 minutes or less, or probably more knowing us. But this week, it's a pretty easy one. Toronto FC's 5-0 loss to the Philadelphia Union and what that means for the Supporters' Shield race and the season going forward. Michael, we'll start with you. Just your thoughts on, a game that we knew was going to be big for Toronto FC, but obviously not the way we thought it was going to turn out.
Yeah, that's by far the biggest storyline, obviously, in TFC land. Let me preface what I'm saying by noting that TFC was missing arguably their best center back this season. They were missing arguably their best central midfielder this season in Jonathan Osorio. They were missing their 2 best strikers and probably 2 biggest goal-scoring threats in Jozy Altidore and Ayo Akinola. They were missing their best winger in Pablo Piatti. And they were missing Eric Zavaleta. So, that being said, that has to be the worst Toronto FC performance that I've seen in a very long time. We noted how big that matchup was going into it. Everybody knew how big that matchup was going into it. And to go out there and lay an egg like that, that's like a measuring stick game. And how do you measure yourself after that? Where do you go from here, I guess? And now I'll say what Michael Bradley, I'll kind of echo what he said after the game, is that they've done a really good job over these years of having these games happen few and far in between. They've done it. He said this stuff happens in football. These games happen to an extent. Sure. Like these games always do happen, but not in that magnitude and not in that type of environment where this is a Supporters' Shield on the line. And if TSC were wanting to talk about the Supporters' Shield as much as they did, for them to go out and lay an egg in that type of performance with the Shield on the line, that's disappointing. That's disappointing for me. And let's see how they bounce back. Because let me also say that this isn't the end of the world. They have a very much legitimate shot at contending for the Supporters' Shield. This is a bump in the road, and I really do think that they are going to bounce back from this. So, Jeff, I'll pass it to you. Let's see what you have to say.
2 thoughts. Look at how quickly the pendulum shifts, right? 538 now has us at 31% to win the Supporters' Shield, and Philly at 59% to win the Supporters' Shield. If that doesn't prove that we are in a funky, bizarro world where numbers almost don't matter, sorry, Martin Bailey, because they do. Please sit down. Then I don't know what else is. And then the other thing I want to point out is that we did the same thing to Atlanta when they won the Supporters' Shield, right? We had it wasn't exactly the same thing because we were just playing for ego and credibility, but we absolutely torched them. And then they went on to win MLS Cup, and to a man, they said that the reason that they were both so adaptable and so hungry in the playoff run was because they got their asses handed to them by Toronto in the last game of the season. Yeah. I mean, all bets are off. Like I could take responsibility for some of this because, my wife and I were watching the game, and at a certain point she was like, I'm not watching this game anymore. And then she kept, coming back in from the back room and saying, did they score on us again? So karmically, there's probably some fault that rests in my house for this outcome. I wasn't eating nachos, so at least there's that. But yeah, no, it was bad. It was bad all over. One thought I had though is, isn't this a bit easier to take when we just get absolutely torched than it is to lose a close game. I mean, I'm upset, but I'm not as upset, and I wonder why that is.
I wonder if this has anything to do with it, as Ken kind of points out here. As he says here, KJ was very complimentary of Philly's performance, but as he mentioned, TFC was down a ton of starters. Do you think it was a really great performance by Philly, or just the reality of TFC not having half of their starters available? Mitch, I want to throw that to you. Let's start with you on that one.
Yeah, I think it's probably a combo of both, but I really loved what Philly did in this game. I mean, they came out and they attacked Toronto FC, and that's been one of the things we've kind of talked about all year with Toronto that we haven't liked is, they're not that ruthless. Philly was unbelievably ruthless in this game. They found out what Toronto FC's weakness was, and they just kept going there. They kept pressing Toronto FC. The first 25 minutes were a masterclass of just, pressing the heck out of Toronto FC, taking that game over. And then, when they saw Toronto FC was struggling, they didn't, let their foot off the gas. They just kept going until, it could have been more. That's the other thing about this, it was 5-0, but there was a lot of chances they had that they squandered as well. So
27 shots.
27
exactly.
shots to 3 shots. I mean, it was pretty woeful. I don't know the stats from the Houston Akeche blowout, which this will be compared to.
Joey and Dunn's only start.
Yeah, I don't know if it was that one-sided. And then there was that game that I missed on the honeymoon where I think we drew DC 0-0, but we put like 4 billion shots on them or something, and we just couldn't capitalize. George says he blames the cursed Unity kits, which is funny, maybe just to me. And then I lost my train of thought. So you guys.
Well, I think the stat that stood out for me from this, and Oliver Platt was writing about this over on One Soccer, was the Union won 72 duels and only lost 40. So like, that right there shows you how one-sided this game was, where it seemed like almost every ball, and statistically almost every ball that was up for grabs, the Union were picking up and were going harder at. And I think, that's a combo of things. I think this Toronto FC team is obviously tired, and you cannot understate how much being able to go back to your own bed and being in your hometown is critical to all of this. I think that really has shown over the past little stretch, at least. Toronto FC just look absolutely tired, and the injuries are catching up with them, and a number of things like that. But
I would almost question there, Mitch, if that week off in between where they're going home and coming back, is that better for them because of all the travel they have to do, all the we know how much Jozy can or how much Jozy loves a plane ride back and forth. So I mean, they didn't look good after that week of rest, and it's kind of worrying because coming up now, you're going to have these weeks of rest. Are they going to go back home between now and the playoffs? Now that's the question. That's the ultimate question. I mean, it's hard to blame them if they do, and I'm not saying it is a bad thing for sure if they do, but just after a performance like that, those are the questions you have to start asking.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that was my point. I think maybe this time going back home was a mistake. And it's certainly up for argument. I can't answer it with any certainty, but proof's in the pudding, guys. And then also, I said this on the private chat, but that was the most beautiful super mega ultra press I think I've ever seen consistently over 90 minutes in an MLS game. Like, that was just superb. Philly were just insanely superb that night. And it's against, despite the amount of starters that we were missing, we're still no slouches. I'm gonna rally against. I don't.
Being said, Jeff, look at the lineup Vanny put out. Did you agree with that starting 11?
I didn't. I didn't.
So let's talk about it a little bit. You say Philly had a really, really good press. What was the biggest problem for TFC there?
Midfield.
It was for me. It was the hold up play, and it was the fact that Alejandro Pozuelo you were relying on Paz to do that. And what I found really frustrating is the Erickson Gallardo kind of banter, because this guy got put in another suicide mission. He's first of all, he's a right footer and he's a dominant right winger. Like that's his position. That's his MO. You're going to ask him to play on the left wing. First of all, you're putting him at disadvantage. Secondly, you're putting him there and asking him to just run. and with nothing else in front of him, no other option in front of him, nothing to, play off of. You're using Paz to play off of, but Paz can't hold the ball up. So then, in a sense, you're asking Erickson Gallardo, who's 5'4", to hold the ball up. He was also, Vanny also, I guess, at times he saw that when Toronto FC were in possession, very rare it was. He asked Erickson Gallardo to kind of shift over to right forward there, and they kind of played into a 4-4-2 at times. But it was so few and so far in between because of perhaps that press that you're asking Erickson Gallardo to go from one diagonal of the field to the other. And, 2 goals later, we saw Erickson Gallardo being subbed off, and he's obviously the biggest, scapegoat for all of this. But that's tough, man. Like, you put him in a really bad spot there.
It's the Akeche special. I mean, how many more similarities are we going to be able to draw from this game to that Houston debacle, right? That Houston debacle was very much Aguirre Akeche and TFC 3, right? So, this one was Erickson Gallardo leading a Franken team, a Franken side. But, at the end of the day, how many more excuses are we going to make for this guy, right? My patience is near to done. When is it ever going to be ideal? And in such case that it is ideal and we trot him out there and he still underperforms, are we going to talk about lack of chemistry and et cetera? Like, at what point does he have to be responsible for being a professional footballer? And occasionally you're not
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I will admit to that as soon as we get to see him with a legitimate shot in a 4-4-2 where he's kind of that second striker and he's kind of playing that right forward where he doesn't have to track back as far as much. If we get to see Erickson Gallardo in that sort of extent, I'll agree with you because I think he's very dangerous in that sort of position. It's what Pablo Piatti was playing the other day when TSC played 4-4-2. That exact same position where you're playing off Ayo Akinla, I think Gallardo would excel if he's just trying to get in behind because he has pace. We know that, and I think he has that directness. It's just I think he's just being asked to do a little bit too much and just refine the player.
I don't know. I mean, Richie Larea was also having a kid when he was like on trial with TFC. There are plenty of people that don't speak the language, so the excuses as to why Erickson Gallardo hasn't integrated with the squad yet, they don't really hold a lot of water to me because we've seen other players meet the same challenges and find their place. So again, my question is how much longer are we going to make excuses for this guy?
Well, let's get Kristin on and hear her thoughts on the Philadelphia game because I feel like we could go on this all day. One thing I did want to touch on here while we get her on, and I think you guys did sort of mention this, but when we're talking about that Philadelphia Union press, you look at the fact that how toothless Toronto FC were offensively, that allows them to press harder because why? Toronto FC showed no reason why they should be worried about anything Pozuelo, Endo, or Gallardo were doing up top. So all of a sudden, when there's no threat, you can push a little bit more forward and worry about your defensive duties a little bit less. And I think that helped them out. But we're now joined by Kristin Knowles of the Vocal Minority Podcast. How you doing, Kristin?
I'm good. How are you guys? I know. Other than Jeff absolutely hates Erickson Gallardo. But, how are the two of you? You guys okay?
We're hanging in there. Kristin. It's good to have you on, though.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Good to have you on.
Back, it's my old stomping ground. So
exactly. Let's qualify it, Kristin, for a second. So
I need qualifications. Oh shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, some people might not know that she actually predates Michael and I at WTR. I wonder, Mitch,
me too.
Was there there was no carryover for your time at WTR with Kristin's time at WTR?
I think. Mitchell, were either Duncan or I still there when you started?
Yeah. At the start,
when you first started, we were, yeah.
Yeah, and Duncan, of course, is Duncan Fletcher of the Vocal Minority, who happens to be the founder of Waking the Red and responsible for why everybody changed the name to Walking the Red, because it's a bit difficult for those not in the know, as they say. Anyway, let's get on with it. That was my qualification spiel, and obviously, Kristin, we want to know your thoughts on the 5-0.
Other than the fact that it was a nightmare, 11 years to the day of the infamous 5-0 loss to the energy drinks, the first chance that Toronto ever had to make it into the playoffs, and they totally blew that up. This had to, I just thought it was ironic that it happened on the same date, and to have a team shoot themselves in the foot so hard is it's distressing. And a lot of it, I think, has to go on Vanny's shoulders for this one. Michael, you touched on that in terms of how he set this team up. And he set them up to fail in terms of the lineup, but also in terms of tactics. So we keep talking about that press, and that is the way to beat TFC. And the fact that more teams don't do it always surprises me. I'm like, why are you not just forcing the press on them? Because they rarely can respond to it, and they rarely try to absorb it because they always think they can counterattack and come in behind the lines. And when you have Piatti missing, which is huge, can't underscore what a huge loss that is. When you've got no speed in your center defenders, and you keep asking them to go forward. Why are you asking them to go forward? Why? What is wrong with you? And when you have when you have an anemic attack, like there's nobody, you have I time and time again, I've watched this game. I watched it again this morning.
Why?
Because I had to because I missed most of it on Saturday because I was on a family call with my brother in Australia for like 2 hours, so I missed most of the match. But watching the number of times someone like Gallardo would try to get forward, or later on even Mullins, and just be like, there's no one behind. Oh, okay, there's no one behind me. Like Nick DeLeon is the only one charging forward, surrounded by 7 Philadelphia Union players because no one's joining the attack. And then, but even in the first half, talk about the press, the space in between the lines the TFC left. Like, why are you not closing your lines? What is wrong with, like, I just don't understand. The whole thing just frustrated me watching the match from a tactical standpoint, let alone from a player execution. I agree with Michael about Gallardo. I don't see how you can give up on a player that has had he's had 2 starts this season. One was so long ago, everyone had forgotten about it. He's barely had a chance to play. And I feel for the guy. They apparently fought for this player to be signed, and then they give him no time. Like, he and Liam Fraser should be best friends by now in terms of the amount of time and attention that they're being given by the coaching staff to gel with the team, to have an opportunity to play. So I think this match, mostly, honestly, I lay on Greg Vanny's shoulders. Now, yeah, the players did not execute whatever it was they were supposed to be executing, but you can't set a team up like that when you're missing that many starters, when you're playing in Philadelphia's home turf where they haven't lost this season. They've won 6 matches. It's your best competitor. This is the team that you are looking to rise up and fight for a place at the top of the league. And TFC normally will at least try to rise up to their opponents as much as they play down to their opponents. In this case, I don't know what they were. I can't even tell what they were thinking. I can't tell if I know they weren't like, oh, we got this in the bag, because obviously Jim Curtin's team has been excellent over 3 seasons. But you have this malaise on the pitch where it was just a lot of running around, lack of effort when they were trying to do something. I don't know. It was a very frustrating match for
no doubt, yeah,
so many reasons.
Yeah, I have a follow-up because Matt Doyle at the MLS Mothership, he's pretty brutal in his knee-jerk analysis of the match, and he said that it may be time, and I can't believe I'm saying this live, but he said it may be time to bench Michael Bradley because he's just too slow. I think the sample size coming back from injury is a bit small, but it can't be. You asked me about 20 minutes ago what I thought the chief problem was, and for me it was the midfield, how we were just getting absolutely torched in the midfield, and that there was no pace there, and how much we missed Oso, for lack of a better word, and we missed Oso in Michael Bradley's position. So I wonder what the panel thinks about Matt Doyle's spicy take.
Kristin, you can lead off with that one. I'll follow up.
As long as Michael Bradley thinks he is healthy, he will not get benched, regardless of his performance levels. It's the way of TFC, and it's an issue with TFC, and has been since he joined the team, where they search to fit him into tactical formations that didn't work. They put players around him in whatever they were trying to do. So the team is very Michael Bradley focused. There is no other focus on this team as long as he is with them and is considered to be a starter. And that's just the way it is. I would love to see him sit. Now, I would love to see Liam Fraser take his place. I would love to see Liam Fraser have started last night instead of Endo, or instead of Delgado. But I actually think without Endo, we would have had you would have had such a different look on the wings. You would have had better defensive coverage. It offers so much. But yeah, Michael Bradley won't. It's not even a question. There's no point in bringing it up because it won't happen.
So, did anybody notice Tsubasa Endo in that game? Because I went like half the game with it for like forgetting he was even on the pitch because he did close to nothing. I thought that was really frustrating, and I thought the way that he was played and Garrido as well, that was just not good. In terms of the Michael Bradley thing, listen, he is still Toronto FC's best midfielder for me. That's not to say that won't change down the line. I just don't think we're there yet. I still think Michael Bradley, as Kristin said, Michael Bradley's close to the first name on Greg Vanney's team sheet, if not the first name. He built around Michael Bradley. That performance that we saw, or not yesterday, but Saturday night against Philly, it wasn't great from Bradley, but it wasn't great from many of them. Like Marky Delgado was abysmal. Aura was terrible. Yes, we could. Michael Bradley is obviously the one we point to because he's the new kind of injection into that lineup because he came off that injury. But that wasn't Michael Bradley's fault, that performance at all. We know how good Michael Bradley can be on both sides of the ball and how important he is of a voice to this team. So I just think as a personality and, even his ability to play, I still think he is the best midfielder on this team. That being said, it's a question for Greg Vanney has to ask himself moving down the line is what do you do in that central midfield? Because you do have Bradley back in the mix. Hopefully Ozo's going to be back in the mix. And then you do have Marky Delgado there. Before Vanney was playing two of those three. How are you going to sort of incorporate all three of those guys? Because all three of those guys are starters in this league for sure. I'll leave that to you guys. I don't know how you guys, I think Jeff, you touched on, you'd go back to Delgado and Ozo, right?
No, I didn't say that outright. I thought Matt's take was interesting. And I thought, the suggestion of benching Bradley and him not playing 90 minutes is so alien to us. And it to me, it's worth discussing, if we have another showing where he starts and the midfield is just not working, who's going to sub him off for maybe Fraser to play the rest of the game or a different look. It just seems that, Greg Vanney's more willing to sacrifice center backs for no reason than to tinker with his midfield. It may not be the answer, but it doesn't even seem to be an option. And I just think that maybe my issue is that.
That being said, we're talking about Bradley here, but Fraser had a pretty bad game himself.
Oh yeah, no, exactly.
I think he gave the ball away twice on two Philadelphia Union goals, leading directly to them. So again, it's just that Michael Bradley spotlight. I think is just going to be shown on this team if the team's not doing well. I think vice versa, if the team is doing well, he does get a lot of the credit too. So it's just the type of player that he is and how important he is to this team moving forward. I think TFC are going to live and die on that Michael Bradley hill, especially going into this season. It becomes a question, okay, what do you do after that? And it's also a really good thing that we're talking about this because this was always the biggest question that we had as, fans and, people who supported this team is what is TFC going to do after Michael Bradley, after Jozy Altidore?
Yeah, I think Jozy was a bigger one for me, and that question.
And exactly, and that's I think Mitch, you kind of wrote an article about this. Is that's how big this year is for Toronto FC because they've taken so many steps behind the scenes to just get past that hump, that Seba, Michael Bradley, Jozy hump, and kind of get over it. I'll pass it on to you guys.
Yeah, I think I think it is, it's kind of difficult again to judge one central midfielder be that Fraser or Bradley, just in a game where so much went wrong systemically with Toronto FC, and they just got overrun from the start. So, I think it is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to just blame this one on Bradley, especially considering it's his first start back from injury too. But Kristin, I did want to talk a little bit about Liam Fraser, because I am also a big admirer of what he's done, and anyone who listens to this show knows that. What is it about Fraser that you like so much and think he is in line for more minutes?
I think one of the things I really like about him is he's a very tidy player. Like he's a very clean passer. He's got a really nice vision on the pitch, and I find he doesn't tend to make a pass unless he thinks it's going somewhere important. And he's not afraid to get stuck in. He's got some nice grit to him, and I think that he has, he's got some pace. He's not the fastest, but the thing that frustrates me is that, people look at matches like this. Yes, he made a couple of bad mistakes, but he also was the only player back on the 5th goal. Where is your entire defense? Why is Liam Fraser racing Santos for the net and trying to stop him from scoring? Where is everybody else? They're half a pitch behind him. No, I think, I talk about a lot about what he did last year during the Gold Cup when Bradley was injured and away. And I think a lot of people tend to ignore that period in time. And that was some of Liam Fraser's best play. But again, for a player, they keep saying, oh yeah, we have big hopes for him. We really we love him. And then they don't play him. And you have to be frustrated as a young player, especially in a crazy year like this, where you keep getting told that this is your time, and then your time doesn't happen. And yes, you have to make the most of your chances. But I think there's a lot of unwillingness to give Liam Fraser any chance at all. And when he first came on the pitch during the match on Saturday, he did some really nice things. There was actually finally a little bit of flow through the midfield. He was linking up well with Bradley. He was linking up well with some of the forward players. And there was a little bit of cohesion before it all completely fell apart again. But there was this chunk of time where it was like, oh, okay, we can breathe. There's some nice movement. This is what we want to see. And it also shows that Bradley and Fraser can play together. I just think that he has, there's an upswing to his game. There's definite potential for his growth. And yeah, I really just like the cleanness with which he plays. He is not a flashy player. He's not supposed to be. He is a tidy player, and has gotten, worked on getting his temper under control. So when I say he's gritty in the right way. He's less likely to get himself into useless trouble as maybe he did last year or the year before.
I still love when he came out of the pitch against the U.S. men's national team and instantly just took out Weston McKennie, and it was like
fantastic. It's one of my favorite things.
It was like, here we go. I think with Liam as well, the one thing is, that almost makes him maybe a little extra pressure is he's so acutely aware of how important this time is during his career, and he talks about it a lot, that he knows he needs to be getting minutes right now. So when he's not, you can tell it's even weighing on him a little more than, we've seen some guys in Toronto FC who are about Liam's age in the past who maybe haven't been as concerned about their playing time or their lack of playing time. But Liam is one of those guys who I think, you'll lose him pretty quickly if he doesn't start getting minutes.
I agree.
For sure. And I think you kind of painted Liam Fraser's really nice there. He's clean, but he's gritty. And that's what I also love about Liam is, and they needed that when he came on. They needed him and Justin Morrow. They needed someone who could keep the ball and, retain possession. That's what Liam does so well for me. That being said, we're talking about Liam Fraser here, but there's also 2 other younger kids who came on and made their debut, and I thought they looked pretty good as well. I'm not sure what you
read my mind, Michael. I was just about to circle back to that. So
hey, we're working together way too long now, Jeff.
Kristin, what do you think of Jaquil Marshall-Reddy and Ralph Wiggum?
Ralph Rizzo. No, you know what? It was, and these are the games in which you should be subbing these players on. Like we talk about where are the young players and why aren't they playing? If there's a blowout, get your kids on, get them some minutes, get them some experience against one of the best teams in the league, and give them this opportunity. And in front of one of the few crowds they're going to play in front of this year as well. Give them an opportunity to play in front of fans. It's a different environment. I like I like them both for different reasons. Obviously, they're excited, fresh legs. But again, they both looked really focused, which I thought was great. Neither of them seemed distracted by the sort of the bigness of the experience. And again, a lot of good movement, looking for the ball. A few missteps down the wing, kind of like, oh, I've overshot this. I haven't really thought about who's sending this pass to me. Maybe a little too eager in some things, but for the short amount of time that both of them played, I was really impressed. And I think that there's a good window for them to start easing their way into not necessarily first team time, but more sub time. We'll actually see their names on the bench and not just be like, oh, look, a bench placeholder. They'll actually get some time, or at least that's my expectation. Now, Julian Dunn's name should be there as well, but that's a whole other long discussion with Julian Dunn.
Yeah, indeed. Just to get this question in, because I know that you had the honor of presenting the Voyagers Cup. So I know that you are very into, for lack of a better word, the Supporters Shield. At this point, would you rather have the Shield or a good, decent playoff run, maybe even a trip to the final?
See, I was thinking about this question all morning. And I don't like to equate the two of them because they really are two different things given the way that MLS is set up. Supporter Shield in a big year is a big thing, but the Supporter Shield isn't the way North American sports it works. It works on a playoff system, right? And best in the league is a point of pride, and it does mean something in terms of playoff seeding. And the year we won the treble was wonderful. And I have that picture of me with the Shield, and it's one of my favorite pictures, and I was very, very happy, and I didn't want to give the Shield back. But
shouldn't have, clearly.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, I just should have run away with it down the concourse. But the idea that would I rather have the Shield or MLS Cup? I'd rather have MLS Cup because that's how this league is built. But would I rather have MLS Cup or CCL Championship? I'd rather have the CCL Championship.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Because that hasn't happened yet, and I want it to happen so much. So the thing with the Shield, I love the Shield, and the fight for the Shield this year, both on and off the pitch, is an important thing, and it's something that I'm always happy that the players strive for, because they do have that mentality that we are best in the league. And I think that's a fantastic mentality that the players retain, even though they play in a league that doesn't value that.
It's an interesting perspective. Absolutely. Kevin brought up, there's a lot of comments today, but a lot of them are essays, and I'm not going to read them because they're not very succinct. But Kevin brought up, if you had to trade a midfielder for a center back, who would you trade? And then also, we need more depth at center back. So I'll start. Is Erickson Gallardo a midfielder? Because we can make him one for the sake of the trade.
We can play him more often and play him on the right where he belongs.
Kristin, when we said goodbye to Aguirre Keche, did you have the same sentiment, or were you like, he's done?
Aguirre Keche played a lot more, for one thing, a lot more. And I don't think, and Aguirre Keche is not the same quality of player. Now, again, I also felt bad for Aguirre Keche because I think he got torched by being thrown in with a bunch of kids against the Houston team. That's the match everyone's always going to remember. And again, poor Julian Dunn. But these are, it's tough. Not every player comes from a different league in a different part of the world and immediately transitions in the way some players do. And yeah, I called him, we had our nickname for Aguirre Keche, and I feel that he has found a better path for himself going back home, but he was never as bad as he looked, I don't think. But he also got more of an opportunity than Gallardo has ever been given, especially this season. Gallardo played a bit more last year, and so I don't think anyone can say they have an actual complete picture of who Erickson Gallardo is as a player. And
that's the preface. Absolutely, we don't know what we're talking about.
That's the fault of the team. That's the fault of the front office. That's the fault of Ali Curtis, Vanny, everybody. Like this is not on Gallardo, the player. I'd say maybe like 25% of this is on him. Everything else falls on management in terms of his minutes, how they presented him to the media, like everything. And there's a lot of that goes around it. And, he's far away from home. There's a lot of stuff. This year it's hard to be really, really mean to players. I can do it, but it's harder to do it just because it's such a mess of a year. And you don't know what's going through their heads.
Yeah. Charlie says hashtag justice for Akeche, which is unsurprising.
Yeah. Considering he's the only person that owns an Agra Akeche TFC jersey.
Nice.
Aside from Agra Akeche.
No, you know what? I'll give him that. No, if we're going to trade a midfielder, let's trade Marky Delgado.
Wow. Wow.
Because
that is a spicy take.
You just signed into a long-term deal. He's 25.
I know, but I'm talking about in terms of value. If we're looking, Liam Fraser is a possibility too, but Liam Fraser is harder to do because he doesn't get the same amount of time, and he is still considered international because of his age. He's not one of the younger Canadian came through an academy players. So depending on what you're looking at and what team you're looking at in MLS, if you're looking at MLS, how is that going to function out? Now, sure, I'm sure either Vancouver or Montreal could use his skills, but it's more difficult. So I'm looking at trading away value. Not that I don't think Liam Fraser is valuable, but in terms of MLS, Marky Delgado is more valuable.
Damn, I would. I mean, Kevin says who has more value, Fraser or Delgado? I would say Delgado by a country walk. Country walk. I mean, it's not even close. This guy, I would riot if we lost Delgado because I think he's one of the most.
That's your line, really? Delgado is your line.
I love my middle flipper, man. I love my middle flipper.
He's so important to that team.
So important to that team.
He does.
I'm not saying he isn't. This isn't an Delgado discussion.
No. I think you're right. I mean, he has massive value.
You'll riot. Interesting. I would not.
He's probably our biggest trading chip. If we're being honest, I mean, what team wouldn't want him?
Richie, probably a little bit.
Yeah, but Richie's now like a marquee player. I mean, if we're talking about the Gam, Tam, like thank you, ma'am, the wham bam gam, thank you, ma'am trades, then it's Delgado with a bullet. But
if you're not putting Richie in there, I'm not putting Delgado in there because I think he's that important to this Toronto FC team, and you see the way Greg Vanny uses him.
But he doesn't have the fanfare, so he wouldn't attract the same kind of blockbuster trade, right? Like MLS
after this season, I disagree with that.
No, I'm not talking about Richie. I'm talking about Marky.
I still think you can get.
We're talking about Richie. Yeah.
Richie would get a breaking news headline on the MLS mothership, right? Marky would get mentioned somewhere in the role.
No, get out of here. That's a Marky. Okay, Marky is respected in the States, I think. Just maybe not in the national.
I love him. I absolutely love him, but I'm just saying I don't think he would rate the same kind of fanfare that a Richie trade would. In all things being
for sure. I think that's a fair statement.
Well, we've kind of gone well off the rails here. We should probably let Kristin go since we have a injury update with Michael.
Well, one of the reasons that I was so excited to bring Kristin on is because of what she does with the Vocal Minority podcast. And I just wanted to give it a shout out because I think it's so important to TFC land what they do. I think it occupies a really, really, really interesting spot in the TFC hierarchy. And I just wanted to get Kristin's thoughts on, how did it start? What keeps you motivated all these years? And are you, where do you think it lives in the overall TFC mosaic?
Well, funnily enough, it started because of Marty Thompson from Campiel. He actually approached us because we were all writing for Waking the Red or the Yorkies, which was Tony and Mark's old blog. I had my old blog. We'd all been friends for a year or so. Started hanging out together in the stands, and we bantered a lot in blog form and on Twitter. Anyways, Marty approached me and said, "You guys ever thought of doing a podcast?" We're like, "Not really, but sure, why not? Like, what do you want to know?" And he was working for some sporting thing that fell through. So we had done a test podcast ourselves and listened back to him. We're like, "Oh, that wasn't terrible. We're fine, we have good. We enjoyed chatting with each other and bantering with each other. It's like hanging out with us in the stands, right?" So we were like, all right, well, let's talk about this some more. Well, over a few months, we sort of like bashed it around and threw ideas back and forth and thought, why the hell not? Let's just do it. So when the season started, the 2014 season started, that's when we debuted in March. We started a weekly podcast and haven't looked back since. And we morphed it over into its own site. And we obviously, Duncan and I left Waking the Red, and the Yorkies closed their blog, and we just focused on Focal Minority. But it's, we're the only fan podcast, which I think is really important. Not that you guys aren't fans, but you have a little more legitimacy behind you. You've got the might of SB Nation, and you have access to the team in a way that we don't. So we're a fan podcast, but we've been 6.5 years in. We're still here, and thank you. We've had a lot of fun with it, and we have the occasional high profile guest. One of these days we'll get Bill Manning back on, and I think we're just there for what we started out to be, which was an opportunity for things that you can't say on most other podcasts. We're able to level a lot more criticism. We're able to be absolute idiots, which is, malarkey is not just the name of one of our Twitter handles. It's what we do. We, like I said, it's like hanging out with us in the stands. If you ever watch a football match with us, either in the stands or at a pub or whatever, this is what we're like. We go on stupid tangents. We make fun of things. We analyze the game. We go off into random songs. Like, this is literally a stream of consciousness thing that I try very hard every week to control, which obviously goes terribly awry if you listen to us, which is apparently part of our charm. And, I think it gives us an opportunity. I'm one of the few women who does this sort of thing, who hosts a soccer podcast, slightly more main, for a bigger team, for a larger market. But that's not the focus of it, but it's a fact. So that gives something, it's a little bit more of an in for, female fans if they want. But also, we talk about not just TFC. We talk about Canadian soccer. We talk about the CAMPIA. We talk about world issues, and we give ourselves a really wide canvas. And I think that's why we're still around, because there are greater issues at large, and there are different soccer stories that we still want to talk about and we still want to tell. And we want to tell it from the fan perspective. We don't, we like our unsanitized world. And while, yes, we sometimes would like better access to information or to people, we still occasionally get someone like Jeff Paulus coming on our show.
That was a masterpiece. That was so good.
And that was one of our favorite shows, if not our favorite show, not just because he was such a generous guest, but because we had an opportunity to talk about things, about a league that we really love, with a coach that we really respect, and just have like a really open conversation. And that's what we always strive to do when we have guests on. And we had Bill Manning on, and we didn't let up on him. We went after him pretty hard. And it was great, and it was fun, and he enjoyed it. And he wants to come back. He asked me, when am I coming back on? So, you know what I mean? Like, we don't give any, we don't put on airs, I guess. I don't know. We're having fun with it. I think it's important because people have a chance to listen to a fan-run podcast, and you can share your outrageous ideas with us. Sometimes we'll talk about them, sometimes we won't. And I think, we'll keep going as long as I can continue to wrangle the other three into, talking about this nonsense every week. So
long may it continue.
Don't ever stop. Yeah.
Long may it continue. I absolutely love it. I'm such a fan. Let's move on then.
Yeah, really, really appreciate you coming on, Kristin. I obviously have to give a shout out to the jersey, because it is absolutely fantastic. Kansas City Wiz. I mean, one of the best kits, I think, in MLS. Jeff might debate me on that, but
well, I mean, the Colorado Caribous were NASL, so it's
Of course,
I had to wear this for the old school MLS people, just because it is one of the favorite kits that we ever had made. So shout out to Mark for having these done. Mine has Johnson on the back, by the way, for Mo Johnson's time at the Wiz.
Terrific.
Nice.
My Bruges does not have Victor Vasquez on because he wasn't playing for this year, but I almost wish I could have gotten that. Yep.
No, this was a lot of fun. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for coming.
No worries. Thank you, Kristin.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, just quickly before we wrap up here, Michael, let's get some injury updates. Where are we at here with Toronto FC? Because I almost dread logging on to Twitter on game days. You're going to run out of characters soon, man. The list keeps getting longer and longer.
I got to get creative and shortening those tweets. Hold on. Let me open this book that we got here of Toronto's Injury Report. Okay, so we'll start with Ozo. Greg Vanney mentioned that he was going to be hopeful that Ozo would be ready for midweek. He said maybe more likely towards the end of the week. I'm not sure if that becomes more urgent after what we saw against Philadelphia. So maybe we do see him midweek against New York City FC, which is, I guess, tomorrow. I guess now I'm looking at it tomorrow against New York City FC. Next, we'll go Chris Mavinga. Chris Mavinga falls under that same boat, although I still err on the side of you will see him more towards the weekend against Inter Miami as opposed to against New York City FC here midweek. Alex Bono is also getting closer. I think he took his splint off. Greg Vanney told us in one of the media scrums, I think, leading up to the match. So I think he's about a couple of practices away from getting into a game, or maybe not getting into a game, but being available. Ayo's gonna be ready for the next game because he was close to being ready for this game. So I'd expect Ayo Akinola to be ready for New York City FC. Who else got here? Zavs, I think Eric Zavaleta should be ready. I saw him training. So I think he was training before last game too. So I think he should ready. Let me take a breath here and see what else we got. We got, I think the only one left. Oh no, we got Pablo Piatti. That's the biggest concern.
Right.
Is Pablo Piatti because we don't know where he is right now.
Where he is,
Greg
we don't know where he is.
No, sorry, we know his location.
Okay,
we just don't know where his injury was.
Because that is a problem. Yeah.
The Home Alone situation. They left Piatti in the hotel somewhere.
I think it was a calf strain. I think it was for Piatti. So they're kind of determining the severity of that. But to be honest, just reading Greg Vanney's face, he didn't look the most optimistic. So I'm not sure how short term it is, but it doesn't mean he's like Piatti's out or anything like that. We'll get an update on Piatti later today. So we'll see about that. And in terms of Jozy's still a few weeks away, I heard. I think KJ might have mentioned that on the broadcast. So I don't know if Jozy will be ready for the first game of the MLS Cup playoffs. That's another question we got to start asking ourselves as time starts to wind down, but we still got the home stretch here in front of us. A couple more games left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, on that happy note, I think we've gone a bit over time here. So
there's no room for Jeff's rant this week because it was going to be about the Supporters Shield. But
I mean, I think we've had some Jeff's rants during the course of this show, but we'll try and make more time for it next week as a specific segment. But
not a problem. Hold on, there's something.
Yeah, obviously, as you mentioned, just a couple of weeks left in this MLS season, so some absolutely huge games coming up for Toronto FC, and obviously. Huge shows for us as well. We have some more exciting stuff coming for you guys as we move towards the playoffs here that we can't wait to share with you guys. Lively chat today. I was loving that.
Me too. What a great guest.
It's great to have obviously Kristin on, and great to have all of your interaction in the comments as well. There were some wild things going on that I was laughing at during the course of the show. We can't always get to them, but we always get to a couple of them over the course of the show.
Yeah, Mike Saraval had a great take, but it's 400,000 words long. So, next time maybe it needs to be distilled to its barest of essentials.
Exactly. Yeah, we've seen my ability to read statements on this podcast before. It won't be happening again. So
yeah,
But
to be fair, that was the worst font in the world. That Supporters Shield.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like it was, was it serif? Was it sans serif? Was it Sanskrit? I don't even know.
Yeah, Jeff taking one more shot at the Supporters Shield Foundation and the other font. But anyway, thanks to all of you for listening. Until next Tuesday.
See you guys.